Anthony Big Tony Bellafiore didn't look like a criminal mastermind. Heavyset with a limp, always dressed in faded tracksuits and sporting gold chains reminiscent of 1980s Staten Island, he could easily be mistaken for just another aging bookmaker hanging around off-track betting shops. But behind the tired eyes and gravelly voice lay a calculating brain with one of the most elaborate schemes the sport of horse racing had ever seen. For nearly a decade, Big Tony operated in plain sight, orchestrating what investigators would eventually describe as a nationwide web of corruption and race-fixing that reached into nearly every corner of the industry. By the time federal agents closed in, Big Tony had allegedly fixed over 300 races across 17 tracks, involving dozens of jockeys, trainers, veterinarians, and low-level mobsters. Some called him a criminal, others called him a genius. All agreed he was dangerous. This is the story of how one man manipulated an entire sport, and how it all came crashing down. Born in Brooklyn in 1961, Anthony Bellafiore was the son of Sicilian immigrants. His father worked in the Fulton Fish Market. His mother took in sewing. But even in his teenage years, Tony showed a talent for gambling and organization. By 18, he was running football betting pools for union workers. By 22, he had graduated to horse racing, not just betting, but understanding it, inside and out. Tony learned the rhythms of the sport, memorized the tendencies of jockeys, and figured out the variables that dictated odds movement. By his mid-30s, he wasn't just betting, he was paying. He paid jockeys to hold back. He paid grooms to slip sedatives into feed. He paid vets to falsify injury reports. And above all, he paid attention. Unlike traditional organized crime figures who relied on threats, Tony's strength was persuasion. He promised struggling jockeys security, promised trainers a piece of the winnings, and protected anyone who delivered. He didn't want fear, he wanted loyalty. That made his empire harder to detect and nearly impossible to dismantle. Fixing a horse race isn't like fixing a boxing match or rigging a slot machine. There are too many moving parts, too many things that can go wrong. Horses can get spooked. Rain can change track conditions. A single misstep can destroy a plan months in the making. Big Tony thrived in that chaos. His method was to avoid making a horse win, too risky, too unpredictable. Instead, he made favorites lose. By suppressing the performance of the top contenders, he created conditions for long shots, horses owned or trained by his crew, to win at massive odds. These weren't regular wins. These were 41 and 61 paydays. His associates placed hundreds of small bets to avoid detection, collecting millions in payouts through shell accounts and cash pickups at betting parlors from coast to coast. He had contacts in Florida, Louisiana, California, and even Canada. One infamous operation involved a trifecta at the fairgrounds in New Orleans, where a 55-1 horse named Lucky Rascal pulled off a stunning upset. Investigators later revealed that both the first and second favorites had been doped with mild sedatives. Big Tony cleared over $380,000 from that single event. What made Big Tony especially effective was his understanding of desperation. He didn't target elite stables or superstar jockeys. He found those struggling to make ends meet, the third string. Jockey battling weight issues, the trainer whose wife was battling cancer, the vet with gambling debts. He offered them a way out, one race at a time. Soon, his reach extended far beyond any one track. By 2014, federal wiretaps captured conversations indicating Tony had operatives at 11 different racing venues, including Gulfstream Park, Santa Anita, Monmouth, and even prestigious tracks like Belmont and Churchill Downs. He used burner phones, encrypted apps, and even handwritten notes passed through bookies to communicate. He trained his operatives. In code speak, "In a horse needs to take a nap" meant sedatives were in place. Rains coming meant a jockey would ease up on the final stretch. Meanwhile, Tony built legitimate fronts. A horse transport business, a veterinary consulting firm, and even a racing syndicate under his girlfriend's name. All of it shielded the real operation, a nationwide betting syndicate manipulating odds, outcomes, and livelihoods. The house of cards began to tremble in 2019. A sudden surge of unusual betting patterns on obscure races caught the attention of the FBI's Sports Integrity Task Force. Investigators noticed patterns: long shot, winners in multiple states, frequent scratches of favored horses, and irregular veterinary filings. An undercover agent, posing as a former jockey turned gambler, infiltrated one of Tony's outer circles in Florida. Over a year, the agent documented meetings, payouts, and even overheard direct conversations with Tony. But Tony remained cautious. He never used the same phone twice, never repeated his mistakes, and never met with people he didn't know. What finally brought him down was hubris and a text message. A poorly encrypted app, used by a trainer under investigation, revealed damning communication. Tony says pull the brakes tomorrow, 3rd at Monmouth. Same plan. From there, subpoenas flew. Wiretaps were authorized. Bank records poured in. The feds found hidden cash vaults in his cousin's basement and a fleet of vehicles registered under fake names. In 2021, a multi-state raid led to the arrest of 26 individuals connected to the Bellafiore operation. Big Tony himself was picked, up at a racetrack in Saratoga, leaning against a rail, watching the third race. He was arrested without resistance, offering the officers a wry grin. The trial, which began in late 2022, was a media spectacle. Federal prosecutors labeled Big Tony the most prolific race fixer in modern American history. Defense attorneys painted him as a scapegoat, a relic of a corrupt system that had existed long before him. The evidence, however, was overwhelming. Audio recordings, betting slips, financial transfers, and the testimony of more than a dozen flipped co-conspirators painted a vivid portrait of the operation. One witness, a jockey who rode under Tony's instructions for 5 years, broke down in tears as he described throwing races for $5,000 apiece. The courtroom was often tense. Several witnesses wore bulletproof vests. Rumors swirled that Tony had ties to organized crime families in New Jersey and Philadelphia, though no formal mob charges were brought. In January 2023, after an 8-week trial, Anthony Bellafiore was convicted on 34 federal counts, including conspiracy, wire fraud, sports bribery, and racketeering. He was sentenced to 37 years in federal prison, a near-life sentence for a man then aged 62. The Bellafiore case sent shockwaves through the racing world. Several tracks launched internal reviews. A handful of trainers lost their licenses. The Jockey Club implemented stricter vetting protocols. Meanwhile, the FBI established a permanent sports integrity division tasked with monitoring suspicious activity across various sports. However, the case also reopened a painful truth. Horse racing had long been vulnerable to corruption. The sport's decentralized nature, combined with poor oversight and financial pressure on its participants, created fertile ground for manipulation. In a post-trial interview, federal prosecutor Elaine Branson stated, "We didn't just uncover a criminal network. We uncovered the fragility of a beloved American sport. Big Tony didn't create the problem. He simply exploited it." Fans, too, were disillusioned. Attendance dipped at several major venues. Trust eroded. Though most races were clean, the shadow cast by Big Tony lingered. In the months following his conviction, various journalists attempted to interview Tony. Most were denied. But one local columnist, a former high school classmate, received a letter. In it, Tony wrote, "They're going to call me the villain, the kingpin, the destroyer of trust. But you know the truth. I played the game that was already broken. I didn't break it. I just finally figured out how to win." The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten, and signed simply, Tony B. Some within racing circles argue that Tony's operation, while illegal and unethical, revealed how easily the system could be gamed. His case has now become a teaching tool in law schools and sports management courses, often listed alongside infamous scandals like the 1919 Black Sox or the 2007 NBA referee betting scandal. Big Tony Fixes Hundreds of Races may one day be the title of a Netflix documentary, a best-selling true crime book, or even a biopic. But beyond the headlines and cinematic allure lies a much deeper truth about vulnerability, desperation, and the cost of unchecked power. Tony Bellafiore was not a man of high education, nor was he especially violent or flashy. He did not crave the spotlight, nor did he aspire to revolutionize the sport. He simply wanted to win, and win big. In doing so, he exposed the underbelly of horse racing and reminded us that any system, no matter how romantic or storied, is only as clean as the people who run it. As the racing world rebuilds and reforms, Tony sits in a federal penitentiary. In Ohio, his name still whispered with a mix of awe and disdain. Hundreds of races, dozens of lives affected, millions in illicit gains. One man, one system, one scandal that won't soon be forgotten.